Most of us will be familiar with at least the notion of remote viewing, the ability that some people have to leave their body and view locations hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away. However, there are more startling accounts of people who have not only left their own physical bodies, but have left the planet entirely in order to view locations elsewhere in space. Furthermore, rather than being the ravings of disturbed individuals that we might simply cast aside, these remarkable events have most often taken place under the watchful eye of intelligence agencies, as they look to use this amazing ability for their own agenda. I'm Marcus Louth, and I've researched and written about all aspects of the paranormal and anomalous world for years. So join me as we venture on this otherworldly journey to places elsewhere in the universe, even in a different time, somewhere in the future, or even in the very distant past. Remote viewing is a psychic technique that allows people to gather information about a target location or object using only their minds. Unlike traditional psychic abilities like telekinesis or clairvoyance, remote viewing focuses on accessing non-local information. Remote viewers use their minds to travel to a location or object beyond the boundaries of space and time to obtain information. The science behind remote viewing is still not fully understood. However, some theories suggest that this technique involves accessing the quantum field, which connects all objects in the universe. According to quantum physics, particles on opposite sides of the universe can be connected, and a change in one particle can affect the other instantaneously. Remote viewing may be a way to tap into this interconnectedness. Other theories suggest that remote viewing is a result of the brain's ability to perceive and interpret information beyond the five senses. Some researchers believe that remote viewing is a form of extrasensory perception, or ESP, which allows individuals to access information beyond what is available through sight, sound, touch, taste and smell. Although remote viewing has been used in a variety of fields, including law enforcement, archaeology and business, the United States government has a long history of funding research into remote viewing, starting at least as far back as the early 1970s. A program operated under several names, most predominantly Operation Stargate or the Stargate program.
The ability of remote viewing is pretty much well known by many researchers around the world, like myself, and numerous different military programs, be it Grill Frame and Sunstreak and of course Stargate, and associations with the Stanford Research Institute, and even secret military projects and experiments that might have taken place regarding some of those remote viewers from that location. One of which was Ingo Swan, who was said to have been taken to meet with a gentleman known as Axel Rod. I believe that's probably a pseudonym. He was taken to a location and asked to remote view a UFO. This location was said to have travelled on a plane for some hours, didn't know where he was going. He landed, then he travelled in a vehicle to this particular place. It was jungle, they travelled through for quite a while, and they came to a location where he was surprised to see a very large triangular looking craft in the sky that was seemingly sucking water up out of a nearby river. He was shocked, and he was asked to try and connect with remote view this particular craft. He did, and he did it quite successfully, he believes, but it was quite alarming, and it's probably, he said in his book that he wrote about his biography, probably one of the most alarming experiences he's ever had whilst conducting some type of remote view. And that was that this craft, which seemingly was intelligent, somehow knew that it was being remote viewed. And literally all hell broke loose. At that point, when Ingo Swan realised that his game was up, his cover had been blown, they panicked, and they had to make a quick, hasty retreat. The UFO, though, apparently started literally went into some type of frenzy and started firing something down at the ground. Explosions took place. They were literally running for their lives. At that point, Ingo Swan took a very nasty fall and hurt himself significantly. And eventually they got to safety. But he was absolutely furious. He was said to have been furious with the military people, that had him involved in this. He couldn't believe, he was extremely scared. and he didn't want to experience anything like that before. If these incidences did happen, it goes to show the support and authenticity behind the phenomena of remote viewing, and why certain military establishments might want people in remote viewing programs to be able to remote view some of these crafts or even occupants in regards to what are they doing. Very, very possible. It's certainly interesting to point out that the military, US military, have been involved in the research of remote viewing for a long time and incorporated it into certain secret at the time programs that would test military officers for their PSI phenomena, or should we say psyche abilities. Nevertheless though, it seems to have plenty of evidence to support remote viewing does actually work.
Although we won't spend too much time on him as his story is so well known, we can hardly speak about remote missions to other planets without mentioning Ingo Swan, who was part of a number of these government-commissioned experiments and who is considered a pioneer of sorts of remote viewing. Perhaps one of the most intriguing of these was an apparent remote viewing mission to Jupiter in 1973. According to the records of the experiment, which began at 6 PM, it took Swan 3 minutes for his astral form to arrive at the biggest planet in our solar system. He would make some intriguing statements about what he saw, including the presence of a ring around the planet. And what is interesting about this statement is that several years later in 1979, NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft discovered a faint ring system consisting of small particles surrounding the planet. This discovery was further confirmed and studied in more detail by subsequent missions like Voyager 2 and the Galileo orbiter. Furthermore, Swan claimed that he had a telepathic conversation with an extraterrestrial being on Jupiter. According to Swan, the being communicated him through mental images and told him about the planet's environment and atmosphere, some details of which, like the revelation of the ring of Jupiter, would later be confirmed to be accurate. Arguably Swan's most intense remote viewing mission, however, occurred around 2 years later in February 1975, when he claimed he was invited to take part in a discreet remote viewing mission for a mysterious individual who identified himself as Mr. Axelrod. Upon agreeing to meet this man, Swan was taken, blindfolded, to a secret location somewhere under the ground just outside of Washington, D.C. After being asked several questions about remote viewing and what he knew of the moon, Swan was given coordinates he was to remote view to. He quickly found his astral form moving toward the moon, the dark side to be precise. Amazingly, he reported that he could see huge buildings and vast glass dome-like structures. He then reported entering this moon city and of noticing the presence of some kind of living beings. At this point, he was immediately ordered away from the location by Axelrod and to return to his physical body. Despite asking several times what he had just seen, Axelrod didn't answer.
The success rate of the remote viewers of the Stanford Research Institute were phenomenal. Apart from many others, Ingo Swan was just one of the people who were utilised on many programs and secret experiments for remote viewing. Special experiments happened, including ones where he would be able to remote view not only the moon but other planets, and remote viewing the planets of Jupiter and other areas out there in space. He even mentioned about Jupiter having rings before we even knew Jupiter had rings. It was only later on a satellite actually confirmed that he was actually correct. He wrote down about 11 things, I believe, from what I've been told, and I believe only about maybe 9 or 10 have come to fruition, but even so, that's an incredible amount which are actually accurate according to his details he wrote down. He was also being able to remote view the moon, and as I previously mentioned, claimed to have seen entities on the far side of the moon. The ability to be able to remote view locations around the planet, especially regarding intel, regarding issues regarding war and security, certainly would be beneficial to the United States as well as many other countries that had such programs. And you can well imagine it actually being utilised in some way or another to gain an advancing hold.
Swan, however, is far from the only one to have remote viewed worlds outside of our own. Pat Price, for example, claimed he had embarked on a remote viewing mission to Mars, a session that has become one of the most famous and debated cases in the history of remote viewing. According to reports, Price conducted the remote viewing session on June 27, 1973, under the supervision, like Swan, of scientists and researchers at Stanford Research Institute. Price described Mars as a desert-like planet with a reddish-orange hue, featuring rocky surfaces, canyons and mountains. His descriptions emphasised the barren and rugged nature of the Martian landscape. One of the most remarkable aspects of Price's alleged remote viewing mission was his claim to have observed structures and signs of past or present civilizations on Mars. He reported the presence of pyramid-like structures, dome-like buildings, and indicators of advanced technology. In addition to the structures, Price also alluded to the possibility of extraterrestrial life on Mars. His descriptions included encounters with humanoid-like beings or entities that he perceived as having an advanced level of intelligence. Of course, despite the serious nature of the experiment, many were critical of Price's findings. And we should note though, his descriptions of the terrain came several years before the Viking 1 lander sent the first clear image of our cosmic neighbour, and is quite accurate. Another member of the Stargate project, Joseph McGonigal, also claimed to have remote viewed to the Red Planet, and his descriptions of what he saw were startlingly similar to Price's. He further claimed to have witnessed artificial structures and ancient artifacts. He described pyramid-like structured domed buildings and what he interpreted as evidence of advanced civilization that once inhabited the planet. There is, though, an even more mind-blowing remote viewing mission to the Red Planet. According to a 2017 declassified CIA document, another remote viewer, referred to in the document only as the subject, also remote viewed to Mars at some point in 1984. Only they remote viewed to millions of years into the past. After receiving the coordinates, the anonymous remote viewer found himself on the Red Planet. Within moments, he reported that he could see a huge pyramid that was sitting in a depressed area. He described huge cities with large flat surfaces and very smooth angles, which were bordering on megalithic. Furthermore, there was the definite presence of an advanced civilization on the planet. He also sensed, however, some kind of drastic destabilization, with extremely severe dust storms causing geological problems. The subject was given several other coordinates. He would describe what he saw at each, ranging from huge structures of cities that were built inside canyons like rabbit tunnels, to strange roads that appeared to intersect and that were dug into the valleys, as well as something that appeared almost identical to an ancient Egyptian obelisk. At this point in the session, it was decided to allow the subject to investigate areas of the planet he wished. He settled on several huge pyramids that he claimed provided inhabitants shelter from the storm. He described they appeared to have been stripped bare, and how he sensed some kind of hibernation taking place there. He was asked to describe the beings that were hibernating, to which he responded that they were very large people who appeared very thin because of their height. He added that they were dressed in what appeared to be a very light silk, but not the flowing kind, rather one that was cut to fit. His descriptions turned even stranger. He would say that these people were ancient people, and that they were waiting for something to return. When he was asked what they were waiting for, he would offer that they awaited a group who had gone to find a new place to live due to the corruption of their own environment, which was failing rapidly. He was asked to remote view to this group and when they left. He did so, telling them he was now inside what looked like a large boat with very rounded, shiny metal walls. The remote viewer was told to go with the group and report on where they eventually landed. He responded that they had arrived at a really crazy place, with volcanoes and gas pockets, and which appeared very volatile. He added that there was also appeared to be much green vegetation, and although similar to Mars, had a different sky and atmosphere. Here the session was brought to a close. Of course, the implications are clear, that a dying race sent out a small group to locate another planet that could possibly sustain life. And we might assume that that planet they discovered was Earth, over 1 million years ago. If this was true, then do the origins of the human race go all the way back to Mars? Incidentally, the coordinates the remote viewer was given sat in the Cydonia region, a region that not only has mysterious anomalies such as the face on Mars, but also, at least to some researchers, distinct signs of artificial ruins that would suggest some kind of ancient advanced civilization. And given that this was a CIA experiment, we can only guess what the intelligence agencies and governments know.
Ex-NASA specialist John Brandenburger wrote and documented his discoveries in regarding the Martian atmosphere is quite interesting. It supports the theory that an ancient nuclear war may have taken place on planet Mars, evidence that left behind traces of these nuclear explosions in the atmosphere, maybe like isotopes, and are identical signatures to what we would find if a nuclear bomb actually had gone off, a tremendous bomb. If that had happened and these explosions existed and during some type of battle war incident on an ancient planet Mars, it may have been enough to destroy the Martian atmosphere, leaving it open to the elements of space. And when that occurs, the planets seem to dry up, water disappears, it becomes dust, it becomes deserts. And this is exactly what we're seeing across the Martian plains. It's just nothing but desert. There's no atmosphere, there's no seemingly water. Where water was in abundance, it was very much like Earth apparently, according to researchers and scientists, that it had rivers, it had seas, it maybe even had docks. For some ancient civilization that once lived there. Whatever happened on ancient planet Mars, we don't know if it happened hundreds of thousands of years ago or it happened millions of years ago. Are we the ancestors from Mars even? Even that question has popped up from time to time. No matter what, Mars still holds a lot of mysteries, and yet we're still to discover many things, I believe, to come. In regards to evidence of ancient civilization once living on Mars, there seems to be plenty of that. And there are some profound photographs out there. And you can say it all kind of leads into the idea that, we're not the only kids on the block. Maybe there was another pre-existing civilization before us.
As the 2000s have unfolded, there have been many claims from remote viewers of locations outside of our own solar system, and even our own dimension. And these claims have come outside of the confines of government experiments. Some of the most intriguing claims came very recently in 2021, when a remote viewer named Lady Hashira claimed to have remote viewed not only to another planet, but to another planet on a different frequency or dimension. Lady Hashira claimed that when she remote viewed, she was in contact with extraterrestrials who acted as guides. She further offered that these alien entities had technology that could manipulate the frequency the astral body vibrated at, and so ensuring that it could undertake a physical form in any given world. Further, according to the remote viewer, another Earth-like planet exists at only a slightly higher frequency than the Earth. She would describe a city on this planet as having extremely tall buildings, many of which were connected with aerial walkways that appeared to be motorized in some way, so it was in constant motion. Even more enthralling, she would describe what appeared to be city limit portals, which would take a person from one place to another in an instant anywhere within the city. Even stranger, the food is dispatched to each person in a way that is right out of a science fiction movie, with each person approaching a desk of sorts where they request what food they want, and then it comes out of an opening in the wall moments later. Another intriguing detail offered is that the city's entire population would seemingly eat their meals together at huge eating areas around the city, each of which had multiple long communal tables inside. Perhaps most remarkable of all, there are already, she claimed, human beings living on this alternative frequency planet, and what's more, many of the people born there are now living on Earth. Another remotely viewed planet was described as having very Earth-like sky, but with a green rocky terrain, out of which vast cities were carved out of the highest standing rock, under huge cigar-like airships that patrolled and ferried people across the sky. Yet another was described as having heavy white particles that permanently floated through the air during specific seasons of the year, and where buildings were organic with a living consciousness. Whatever we think of such claims, they are certainly intriguing and thought-provoking. So, is it possible that at least some of the people we have examined here really have viewed other planets and cosmic bodies remotely? As we have seen, there are many people on record claiming to have done so, and many people continue to make such claims today.
The extrasensory perception of remote viewing seemingly is really not much different than astral projection, maybe some form of more of a controlled state. But then you can also argue that it's similar to uncontrolled states, such as like out-of-body experiences, or even has some type of connection to the near-death experience, either which all have some significant information pertaining to the evidence that they do in fact exist, especially near-death experiences. So we can't argue the point that, that remote viewing doesn't exist. There is a good, strong case for it. Even to the point where we have to say, well, we go back and look at old military programs and we can see the pattern of how people went through training programs with certain set questions. Questions to young soldiers that might suggest that they had some form of psi-ability or ESP experience. And those people were often taken for further questioning and experiments to see if they were worthy to be drafted into secret programs of remote viewing by military, be it Grillframe, Sunstreak and Stargate and many others. Probably others are out there that we don't know the name of. I do still think that the remote viewing programs still are operative under a different secret name, of course, and are still being utilised. There was even rumours back in the day of the Lockerbie crash that took place in Scotland that this particular crash that happened of a 747 was remote viewed. And one of those people that was remote viewing that crash to find out probably information pertaining to what had actually happened came across another remote viewer from another country. And there was a little bit of panic that happened and they pulled out. That might actually be the case because, it's said that remote viewing can seemingly cut through the efforts of time and space, but actually be able to identify other remote viewers around you at that time, even if they're from another country. This lends hand to what is referred to as PSI warfare, and a lot more might be going on there than we never imagined.
Perhaps one thing to consider here is if these talented individuals can be tapped into, perhaps even taught, then how might that help society in general? Clearly, such methods could be used, as they already have been, to track down criminals, or perhaps even a missing person. They could also, however, assist greatly in future space exploration, and possibly even in the search for extraterrestrial life. Remote viewers, for example, could provide valuable information about potential landing sites for space probes or rovers, as well as potential hazards in the environment. They could also be used to explore locations beyond our solar system, where traditional exploration is not possible, perhaps even providing insights into the characteristics of exoplanets and the potential for supporting life. Indeed, remote viewing, while perhaps viewed as a preposterous idea by many, could very well, if the ability to do so became widespread, be another step in the evolution of the collective human consciousness, as well as where we sit within the universe itself. For now though, thank you for joining me, and until next time, goodbye and take care.